being exposed to it while I was in college, attending a non-denominational church. While my home church was a disciples congregation, all my college buddies wanted to go meet girls at the megachurch down the street, and so they would from time to time get me to tag along with them. For the religion, of course, not the girls. The system was actually part of the offering envelopes in the pews. There was the usual line for your name and the amount of your contribution, but there were also 6 little boxes underneath where you could put a check mark. Next to the boxes were those 6 actions. Worship attended, Bible brought, Bible read daily, Sunday school lesson studied, prayed daily, gave an offering. For this particular church, these were the 6 things worth recording. Not the 10 Commandments or the 9 fruits of the Spirit or the 8 Beatitudes or the 7 cardinal virtues. No, there were 6 essentials of the Christian life. And bringing your Bible to church was one of them. In fact, some visitors once came to the service and sat down in front of us, and one of my buddies whispered to another saying, "Did you see that? They don't have their Bibles." My other buddy responded by looking over with me in judgment and saying, must be one of those disciples. Don't get me wrong, bringing your Bible to church is a wonderful practice along with these other 5 marks of this record system. It's just there was something about these spiritual scorecards that just weren't adding up for me. All my friends were so proud when they could check all 6 boxes every Sunday. As long as they were doing these 6 things, they were always on good terms with God. It wasn't until some years later that someone finally put words to the way I was feeling. His name was James. Of course, he'd written them some 2,000 years before. It's just that I'd never really noticed him back there hiding behind Paul. Which I suppose should be no surprise, given James's sketchy history in the church. Some people think it's more like Jewish wisdom literature than the Christian gospel. After all, with the exception of 2 passing references, there's no mention of Jesus. Others have said that James's emphasis on human works contradicts Paul's insistence on divine grace. In fact, the Muratorian fragment from the year 170 AD, our oldest list of the books of the New Testament, doesn't even include the book of James. Writing in the 4th century, the church historian Eusebius admitted that James was accepted by many, but still relegated to the category of contested writings. Even as late as the 6th century, Martin Luther famously described James as an epistle of straw. No, the church has not given James much attention throughout its history. Yet that doesn't mean its message is to be taken any less seriously. In fact, I worry at times it's because it's been ignored precisely because of its message. And I'm not alone. Jim Wallace, an author, minister, and leader of the organization Sojourners, was a seminary student in divinity school just outside of Chicago when he and his classmates decided to try an experiment. Jim and his friends had grown up in a congregation and traditions that placed great emphasis on the importance of the church to be active in their communities, to not just listen to the word, but to live it as well. However, they weren't hearing that message in seminary. They felt like much of their education was aimed at saving more souls through teaching and preaching, never anything about caring for your neighbor or helping the poor. And so Jim and his friends decided they would scour all 66 books of the Bible and underline every passage and verse that dealt with poverty and justice and oppression and caring for the least of these. Then one of Jim's fellow classmates took a pair of scissors and physically cut every one of those verses out of the Bible. The result was a volume in tatters that barely held together. From Genesis to Revelation, so central were these themes to Scripture that the resulting Bible was in shambles. Some 2,000 verses flipped. In fact, when Jim speaks on these issues now, he still takes that Bible, which he and his friends cut up so many years ago, and he holds it in the air and he proclaims, "Brothers and sisters, this is the church's Bible. It's full of holes. And each one of us might as well take our Bibles, a pair of scissors, and begin cutting out all the scriptures we pay no attention to, all the biblical texts we just ignore. I get it. It sounds harsh. But it also sounds an awful lot like James. Be doers of the word, James writes, and not merely hearers who deceive themselves. You see, James is a helpful corrective to our tendency to reduce the gospel to a system of beliefs or doctrines or to a matter of personal piety or self-centered spirituality. After all, Jesus didn't just want people to hear him. Jesus wanted people to follow him. James goes on to define true religion as caring for orphans and widows in their distress. Orphans and widows weren't part of that 6-point system of faith. There were no boxes for them. But according to James, that's really what matters in the end. The ultimate test of our faith is how we take care of the most vulnerable among us, the most powerless in our world. In fact, James even goes as far to say that religion without action is worthless. Like I said, I realize this sounds harsh. After all, the religion of that non-denominational church I attended certainly wasn't worthless. It emphasized the importance of loving God and listening for God and having faith, all of which are important. But we also need James to teach us to act on the word, to take it out into a hurting world. In other words, it's not just about whether you've taken your Bible to church. It's also about where your Bible might take you. At least that was the case for Detective Sergeant Ashley Jones with the Avon and Somerset Police in England. She was talking to an elderly widow who had been scammed recently. A woman would get a call each morning from a man pretending to be her friend, and he eventually convinced her to give him some $31,000. Jones was struck when the widow said she didn't mind sending the con man money. Otherwise, I would never speak to another person for weeks on end, she recalled her saying. She was one of many people, both elderly and young, Jones encountered who were profoundly lonely in their community in Western England. So she decided to do something about it. Jones convinced the police department to let her designate a couple of chat benches in 2 local parks this past summer, in mid-June. She hung colorful signs that said, you can see it on the screen here, the happy to chat bench. Sit here if you don't mind someone stopping to say hello. Since then, more than 40 conversation benches have been scattered throughout the United Kingdom, and people in other countries, including Australia and the United States, have shown an interest in doing similar kinds of projects. Jones says the benches aim to be one small way to break down those walls that divide us by bringing a presence into the lives of those most lonely among us. Who knew the simple act of creating space for conversation and saying hello to a fellow neighbor could have such a profound influence on the world? Well, Detective Jones did, of course. But it wouldn't surprise me if she heard it from someone who showed up in her life much earlier. You and I, we know him as James. And he must have showed up here, too, some point along the way. After all, you understand this call to action. We experienced it again during the moment of mission this morning. In fact, when discussing words for our mission statement, the word service in and of itself didn't seem to carry enough weight for the degree to which you have passion for it. Even though it might sound redundant, several felt adding the word active better captured the heart of the ministry we do for the life of this congregation. Whether it's through staffing the Community Assistance Center once a month, putting on Camp Craddock every summer, or supporting an apartment and family through Homestretch, or inspiring kindness program, or collecting Halloween costumes for foster children, or supplies for victims of Hurricane Dorian, or sending our youth annually on a mission trip, or dedicating 10% of our church's total income to outreach every year. It's obvious we strive to be doers of the word and not merely hearers. Now, the truth is, James shows up in lots of different ways. In fact, you never know where he might take you. I think I may have mentioned that before, while I was in seminary, I went with a group of students to the U.S.-Mexico border with a group called Border Links. Border Links gives people the opportunity to experience all the dynamics that take place around the border and to learn more about the complicated issues surrounding countries that share a boundary. While we were there, I remember a missionary talking to us about his call to serve the people of Mexico. As a student, he had taken a mission trip with Campus Crusade there. They were to take the gospel to people apparently unaware that the gospel had been there for several centuries. Nevertheless, they preached, they showed Jesus films, they led Bible school for children in a poor village. One day, a young boy who had taken a liking to the man cheerfully grabbed him by the hand and started to pull him. The man didn't know what the boy wanted. The man couldn't speak much Spanish, and the boy couldn't speak any English. Together they walked around the corner to a small ramshackle of a house. The boy opened the door and pointed inside. He was showing him his home, introducing him to his family. The man said that it was there, standing in the doorway, looking into this dilapidated house with 5 or 6 children scampering around the dirt floor, holding the hand of this little boy, that he knew God wasn't just calling him to share the gospel with the people of Mexico, but also to live it. The boy's name, incidentally, was Diego, which just so happens to be James in English.